Olá, pessoal, boa noite. Boa noite, tudo bem? Que bom ver umas carinhas, Ricardo, Gabriel, Ju, a Lilian, a Carla. Muito bom, gente. Selenice está aqui, que bom! Agora que eu vi, que bom. Pessoal, então, hoje a gente vai aí começando um pouco a nossa noite. Outras pessoas vão chegando e vão chegando aqui para a gente vai ter um convidado especial que vai entrar daqui a pouquinho. Mais que tudo, essa InBehavior Talks é uma...
Já entrou? Já chegou.
Tá. Mais que tudo, essa InBehavior Talks aqui é uma celebração especial. A gente queria agradecer aí 2020. Hi, Channing. Nice to see you.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, Channing, I'm going to speak in Portuguese at first, okay? And we'll translate to you. O Channing, então, ele está no Quênia, Nairobi, são 1 da manhã lá, está na night, então ele queria realmente aí estar com a gente hoje. Tem sido um parceiro bem especial, acho que tem umas coisas interessantes que vão acontecer ano que vem. Então, o que eu queria só agradecer, eu sei que muitos de vocês, Rafael, Pati, Carla, Ricardo, Eduardo também, daqui, Pisama, participaram desse ano. Foi um ano para a gente extremamente desafiador, mas que a gente cresceu na IBL como nunca antes, né? Então, acho que a gente teve uma equipe aí fixa, firme e forte com a gente em cada momento. Eu sei que tantos os alunos que estão aqui, que participaram com a gente, foram parte dessa história, que seja também só o início dessa nova era. Queria aproveitar também para agradecer a Paula, né, que entrou num projeto que foi da WWF bem no início do ano, e aconteceu a pandemia, alguns dias depois, e ela assumiu aí como nossa diretora executiva, presidenta, e começou a cuidar aí dos diferentes projetos, né? Ainda não tinha nem a posição, né, e essa questão, então ela se sentiu extremamente dona, e eu tenho certeza que tudo que a gente aconteceu desde aquele dia 13 de março, que ela estava só num projeto, de repente virou a chave, e aí com certeza é responsável por muitas das coisas que aconteceram esse ano. Então eu queria fazer esse agradecimento público aqui, agradecimento a toda a equipe, né? Então a gente tem Clarinha, a Isama, a Lilian, a Isa, né, todos vocês, a velha guarda, né, Diogo, Gabriel, Felipe, que está nos Estados Unidos. Cadê o Fê? Tá aqui ainda? Não, o Fê deve ter caído.
Não, tô aqui, ó.
Ah, aqui, ó, você não estava aparecendo na minha primeira tela. O Fê que está dos Estados Unidos. Então, assim, a gratidão é imensa. Acho que a gente só está aqui, não só como o InBehavior Lab, mas o economia comportamental.org, o MBA da SPM, o Guia de Economia Comportamental Experimental, por cada um de vocês aí que fizeram parte dessa história. A Ana Bianchi não conseguiu entrar, mas a gente tem aí a gente tem, na verdade, 5 anos do Guia de Economia Comportamental, e eu lembro muito bem, a Carol correndo na USP, fazendo guia, a gente tem o jogo da roleta cair no chão, a gente fez aí até o guia, né? Assim, tem tantas histórias sobre esse Guia de Economia Comportamental Experimental, que não está no gibi, né, Carol? Ainda vai ter um livro sobre isso. Então, velha guarda, nova guarda, todos nós somos IBL aí. Também queria agradecer ao Gabriel também, que nesses últimos anos, né, a Carol, eu vou passar para ela um pouquinho, mas a Carol é a cofundadora aí da InBehavior Lab, e ela teve um grande desafio um ano depois, mais ou menos, ou assim que a gente fundou. Então ela foi para os Estados Unidos, agora está em Londres, um desafio grande. E aí a gente contou aí, sempre fazendo muita falta. O Gabriel ajudou muito na estruturação de tudo que a gente tem aqui hoje também, metodologias, como o Felipe, como o Diogo. Então eu sempre me senti muito amparada aí, com grandes cabeças, para mesmo a Super Carol, né, assim, saindo, esperamos ter representado bem aí ela ao longo dos últimos anos. A gente só cedeu, a gente estava brincando, cedeu ela por alguns minutos, alguns poucos anos, minutos mesmo, para Londres, mas ela está no nosso coração. E aí é difícil citar todo mundo, né, gente? Vocês já viram. Então, assim, os primeiros projetos, Diogo, Felipe, todo mundo. Então, eu vou dar a palavra para várias das pessoas que estão aqui também para dar um oizinho para vocês. Mas, primeira coisa, queria dizer que, mais do que em InBehavior Talks, a gente tem um grande convidado, que é o Channing, que estou muito feliz de ter ele aqui, um parceiro presente e futuro. Eu acho que é um InBehavior Talks para a gente celebrar como estamos aí no final de 2020 e depois de 5 anos aí de que muita água rolou. Então, Carol, vou passar para você e depois a gente passa para cada um.
Alô, gente! Bom, eu acho que eu tenho que agradecer, mas eu acho que eu fui chamada aqui de cabeçuda, de velha guarda. Tudo bem, tá anotado aqui, em algum momento eu devolvo essa, né? Então, dá um oi para a nova guarda, né? Já que a gente é velho, com a nova guarda. Muito legal, obrigada por vocês estarem aí, é um prazer, é uma honra, é tudo de bom. Eu estou falando daqui de Londres, 10 da noite, e é uma coisa interessante que desde que eu saí, né, teve toda essa coisa, a IBL, a fundação da IBL, o curso da SPM, escrever, teve todo aquele turbilhão de coisa, mas vocês, assim, quem estava na época sabe que era um bando de gato pingado, nossa, a gente tinha que pegar na pinça para achar gente, a velha guarda, né, conseguimos, juntamos aí a velha guarda, mas era um grupo muito pequeno de gente muito teimosa, muito apaixonada e principalmente muito teimosa. E aí, eu depois fui para os Estados Unidos, fui dar aula numa universidade lá, e aí vim para Londres e tal, e aí eu acabo, o coração tá aí com vocês, mas a distância a gente acaba vendo mais espaçado, e eu quero dizer assim que é sempre muito legal, porque cada vez que eu volto para dar um oi, tem mais gente, tem mais coisa acontecendo, tem mais projeto, um monte de projeto que foi acontecendo nesse ano. Eu fico tentando me manter atualizada, mas assim, a gente acaba vendo, quando a gente vê, tem um monte, né? Então, e isso é mérito, assim, de todos nós, mas principalmente da Flávia. Eu costumo brincar que se a gente tivesse uma série de super-herói, a Flávia ia ter um poder mutante. A Flávia tem um poder de mover montanhas. Então, esse é o poder mutante dela. Ela move, ela faz as coisas acontecer, mais impossíveis, que você fala, não, isso não dá, isso é demais. Daí deu 3 dias, uma semana, um mês depois, ela já está falando, aconteceu e a próxima etapa é isso, aquilo, aquilo outro. Então, a nossa ser mutante, já que eu sou cabeçuda, você é ser mutante. Assim, uma honra enorme. E eu também estou muito feliz de ver vários nominhos conhecidos, nem todos estão aparecendo na tela, nem todos estão aparecendo no chat, estou reconhecendo aí uns vários, por exemplo, o Rafael, tá aí na minha tela, muito legal, já vi a Mari, enfim, sucesso. Não sei, tem que falar alguma coisa especial, Flávia? Eu sigo as ordens, senão é só...
É só estar aqui com a gente. Quando eu falar inglês, a gente pode dar um hi pro Channing em geral. E, pessoal, não vai ter muito tempo, mas eu queria só que vocês dessem, a gente falou alguns nomes, um oi aí, oi, pessoal. Então, pode ser Felipe, na ordem dos que tem com os babies também, né, que tem que sair. Se quiserem aí, só dar cada um oi geral, e da equipe seria ótimo.
Bom, vamos lá. Oi, geral. Eu também acho que sou da velha guarda, por mais que eu seja o mais novo da velha guarda, eu acho, mas eu sou da velha guarda. Não vamos entrar nesse tópico, mas talvez. Vários nomes aqui que eu não conheço. Muito legal ver tanta gente nova. Eu fico sabendo das coisas, a Flávia me mantém informado, o Diogo. Só hoje eu vi uma interface super legal de um projeto que a gente fez lá atrás, que eu tenho certeza que foi melhorado muito, que está sendo utilizado. Eu estou lá desde da ideia do guia e ajudei a trazer o guia. Participei de 4, 5 projetos, eu já nem lembro mais, com a IBL. Fiz parte do MBA da SPM e hoje estou um pouco mais distante. Eu sou professor aqui da Lehigh University, da Pensilvânia, nos Estados Unidos. Aí mantenho contato, espero conseguir trabalhar em alguns projetos quando puder. mas estou um pouquinho mais distante por alguns minutos, que nem a Carol. Mas estou sempre por aqui, muito bom ver vocês.
Obrigada, Fê, você também faz parte dessa história. Pessoal, os outros eu só queria falar, vamos falar o oi, né? Porque o Channing, como não está entendendo nada, nós somos educados, né? Então vamos só falar o nome e um oi, porque para ficar registrado também, que eu acho que as pessoas é legal as pessoas conhecerem. Então quem for da IBL, rapidinho, só um oi.
Isa da IBL aqui, oi pessoal.
Gabriel, también da IBL. Oi para todos.
Olá, pessoal. Eu sou Isama. Um prazer.
Pessoal, Diogo aqui de Aracaju, IBL também.
Paulinha.
Oi, pessoal. Sou a Lilian, aqui de Campinas.
Helenice. E Mari. Eduardo. E chegou. Então, gente, assim, Carla, de Portugal.
Olá, eu sou a Carla, falando aqui de Portugal, do Porto. Hi, Channing.
E todos vocês. Channing, I was asking the team, the IBL team, to tell a little bit about who they are and where they are, because they are all over Brazil, Portugal, Uruguay, and São Paulo, Rio, Aracaju. So it's a big mix here. And it has been a long time that we could join everyone together, gather everyone. And I think 2020 was a very challenging year for us. And also I think, although we know that we can always meet with Zoom and everything, everyone was so tired. So we also, the team was everyone helping each out, like don't need to be in this meeting, don't need. So it was, everyone was taking care of one another too, also. So that was what we were talking about now. I told them also that I was very happy to meet you in this second semester. And you also are in Kenya. It's 1 a.m. there? Well, yeah, 1 a.m. So thank you so much to staying with us till 1 a.m. And I'm gonna now introduce a little bit Channing for you guys. So Channing is the CEO and the co-founder of the Busara Center for Behavior Economics. It's one of the, it's Nairobi-based, a nonprofit advancing in applying behavioral science in the global south. They have already many projects, cases, and are inspiration for many of the countries in the development world. So Channing has completed a postdoc in psychology and public affairs in Princeton University, holds a PhD in economics with specialization in behavior economics and development of University of Hawaii, and a bachelor's in managerial economics from University of California, Davis. So an amazing curriculum, experience, and very nice person that I'm happy that you're here to share your experience with us.
Thank you, Flavia. It's really nice to meet everyone. Yes, I apologize. It's a little bit late and a little bit bright in here, but I'm really excited to spend the next hour having a nice conversation with everyone and share some thoughts that I have. Flavia, I'm not sure if you wanted to, how you wanted to do this. I have some slides that I put together, maybe about...
Oh yeah, sure. No, you can share your slides and tell a little bit about us. So it's your floor.
Okay. So I also have to apologize. I don't speak any Portuguese. So Flavia, please feel free to translate. I tried to make the presentation very simple, just in case it's not everyone speaks English. So hopefully there'll be just a little bit of conversation. If you have any questions, please interrupt. I can't guarantee that at 1 o'clock in the morning I will be very articulate in my answer, but I'm always willing to answer any questions that you might have. So please interrupt me. Yeah, so I just have a few thoughts, and then as I understand, we'll just have a nice more general conversation about behavioral science. So let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes,
Perfect.
we can. And
Okay.
just 1 second, Jenny. And in the end, em português, 1 second. E no final, gente, a gente vai ter, o Jenny vai apresentar, e a gente vai ter pergunta aí do Gabriel, que é nosso consultor, o Diogo, a consultora, e pergunta de vocês. Então, qualquer pergunta, escrevam, que a ideia é a gente fazer aí uma boa conversa e um painel, por isso chamamos também Diogo e Gabriel para se juntar a nós na discussão depois, tá bom? Jenny, thank you.
Thanks. Great. So yeah, I wanted to just share some tips for behavioral scientists, as I know this group is really kind of continuing to work together to spread behavioral science, both in Brazil and wider South America and the wider global South. I again want to thank this team for having me. It's been great to get to know Flavia and the entire team in Behavior Labs, and I really look forward to working with them and working with all of you quite a bit into next year. So thank you for having me. Yeah, just very quickly on Busara. Busara is a nonprofit that's based in Nairobi. Most of our work is in sub-Saharan Africa. We have offices in Nigeria and Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and then also in India. And our mission is to work with researchers and organizations to advance and apply behavioral science in pursuit of poverty alleviation. So we're very development focused, and we kind of very intentionally in our mission talk about advancing behavioral science, which is really doing the science of it. And then also applying it. So working with organizations to directly apply behavioral science. And I try to share some lessons that I've had in trying to balance that tension between those two things, which is not always an easy balance to make as you kind of go into the world and try to actually do behavioral science. It's really difficult sometimes to get right. I'm sure that, Busara's been around for Busara's been around probably for about 7 years now and grown pretty rapidly, really starting to plateau now as we really find our feet. But I think it's worth remembering, I was looking today because we had our year-end holiday party, I was looking back at pictures from previous years, and it's really interesting to see kind of where Busara started, right? Rather than kind of where Busara is now. Where everyone is now is just on Zoom, but Busara once started in a very small place. This picture here on the upper left is one of our very first managers that was registering people in one of the informal areas to join our studies. This middle picture was a PhD student doing one of the very first studies at Busara, but holding a baby because we forgot to tell mothers to not bring their children into the lab. So we had to do a little bit of babysitting at the same time. And then these pictures down here are some of the pictures of our first mobile lab that was done in Western Kenya. And then this was our very first lab back in our early offices, where it held about 20 people and there was about this much room to squeeze through. And now we've been very lucky to grow. So we have a lab that can seat hundreds of people, but it's always really nice to kind of reflect on kind of where we've been and how far and how much growth there is for every behavioral scientist, whether you're in Kenya or you're in Brazil. There's just so much growth here. So I like sharing these pictures with people to show how far that we've come and how much work there is in the early days to do. Okay. Yeah, so most of my talk is about this, is what Brazilian idioms have taught me about behavioral science. I've never been to Brazil, and I don't know any Portuguese, but one thing I like to do when I travel is look up local idioms. They're always really, really interesting because when you look at them literally, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it gives you a kind of a insight into a little bit of that country and that place's culture. So I went and Googled some Brazilian idioms, and I thought about what that might mean for behavioral science and how I could tell a story around that, also because I knew it was 1 a.m. in the morning and I would need something to ramble about. So I pulled together about 8 idioms that I wanted to share that I thought were interesting and have some related stories to my career in behavioral science. fair warning before I start, I have no idea if these actually make sense. I don't know if these idioms are real idioms in Brazil or in Portuguese. I don't know if they make sense in Portuguese. They might be extremely offensive. I have no idea. I pulled them off the internet. So hopefully Google will be kind to me and these idioms will make sense to everyone. But please bear with me and my apologies in case something doesn't hit right. And also I'm hoping Flavia or Paula, you can actually read them because I can't pronounce Portuguese at all. So maybe Flavia, you could read them for me. Okay, so this is the first one.
Okay.
Okay, I see some people, it makes sense. Okay.
It's perfect, yeah. Matar dois coelhos com uma cajadada só. And in English, it's kill two rabbits with one shot. Yeah.
Okay, great. And in English, they have a similar idiom called kill two birds with one stone. So it's very similar. And I wanted to talk about one of the early papers that I did in my career that was able to do this. And what I mean by two rabbits in one shot meant early on when we were thinking about this project, which was understanding how workfare or welfare might be more effective at delivering aid to recipients, we wanted elements of the lab because of the high degree of control you get in the lab. You can really set all the boundaries and parameters of what people experience in that setting. So specifically, we wanted to see whether waiting for money versus working for money changed people's experiential well-being. But we really wanted to do that in the lab because you had a high degree of control in the lab. But we also wanted a field component because we really want to know what happens in the real world. We wanted to know what happened when you gave people money. What did they spend it on? What choices did they make? And did the workfare or welfare affect those choices? And so what we did is we combined both the lab setting and the field setting and kind of killed two rabbits with one shot by combining these two things into one experiment. And I think that was a really interesting choice. Not only did we take it out of our lab in Nairobi, we created a new lab in one of the slums in Nairobi rather than at our office so that we could provide environments that it felt a little bit more natural to people. We brought 3 different groups of people in and had them either wait an hour for a voucher, work an hour for a voucher, or wait an hour for a mixed set of vouchers that restricted a little bit what you could spend on. And what was really interesting then is after they got their vouchers, either through working or waiting for them, they went to a local supermarket that we reached out to. And when they went there and purchased whatever they purchased, we were able to keep their receipt. So we knew everything that they bought. So it kind of gave us that element a little bit closer to the real world experience of what happens when you work or wait for something. Does that change your purchasing behavior at all? So I thought that was a really interesting approach. And I think a lot of behavioral science should really try to match the kind of evaluation technique or the research methodologies to the question that you really want to answer. It's not always true that a lab study is best. It's not always true that a field study or an RCT is best. Sometimes you want to combine the two. So that's my first lesson is kill two rabbits with one shot. This is the next one.
Great. Quem não arrisca, não petisca.
Okay, good. It sounds very different than what I think in my head. So it's really nice to hear Portuguese. So this one is he who doesn't risk doesn't snack. And I wanted to talk a little bit about another paper that I did that was kind of really a bit strange and a little bit experimental, even in an experimental sense. A lot of the work that I like to do really, I like to try to push the boundaries, especially in the academic work of kind of new methodologies. And in this particular case, we were thinking about how to encourage poor people to save, especially over mobile money. And we knew about prize-linked savings. Or lottery-linked savings. It's a fairly popular thing in the US and even in South America. Usually you'll put things into a deposit account and you can win like a television or a vehicle or things like that. But it didn't really exist in Africa. So we really wanted to test whether this would be kind of an effective mechanism at getting people to save. The issue was, though, even though we were working with someone as famous as Dan Ariely, we still didn't have any connections to any of the financial institutions or the banks or the telecoms. And so we thought, what could we do? Again, we thought we could use the lab, certainly. I think that could be a really important thing. And we ended up using the lab for some of it. But we really, again, wanted something that felt real, something that felt a little bit more real than saying, how much do I really want to save? A lot of the papers at the time looking at prize-linked savings or lotteries to encourage savings basically had people make kind of discrete choices over savings in a one-shot lab. And we really wanted something that more mirrored and reflected the decisions that you go through every day. So what we did is I worked with a colleague of mine to actually develop a savings platform. So he developed from scratch and programmed a really intricate savings platform where you would actually save and deposit airtime rather than real money, because we didn't want to get in trouble with the regulators on being a bank. So that you can kind of save, you could deposit airtime and take out airtime onto this platform that he developed. And then we had a nice little savings platform that we could experiment with. So what we did, again, similar to the first case study, we brought people into the lab, had them undergo a number of baseline tests. We could, again, high degree of control. We could do surveys, we could do economic games. And then we onboarded people onto this platform, either with an interest account where they got interest for the money or the airtime, the money that they put onto the account. It was a lottery. So if they put money onto the account, they got these lottery numbers that then every day was entered into a raffle that would allow people to win money if their 4 lottery numbers matched the 4 winning numbers of the day. And then finally, there was a lottery with regret. So the way that worked was we tried to introduce a regret aspect where even if you didn't save, you got your 4 lottery numbers. And the idea here is that when you receive at the beginning of the day your 4 lottery numbers, even if you didn't save, oh my gosh, I might win. And how bad would I feel if I won and I didn't actually save anything? So I didn't actually win any money, but my numbers matched. I would feel really horrible about this. And so that was a really interesting I thought that was a really interesting twist on things. And indeed, we found that people who were in the lottery or lottery and regret conditions saved more often. It's interesting, they didn't save more overall. They actually spread out their savings, I think, so that they could experience the joy of playing the game every day for 60 days. And we saw that in the group with regret, when the day after they won but didn't save, so for some people, they would have matched the numbers but didn't save. The day after that, they would actually save quite a bit because that regret really sat in their mind. I need to really save because I might regret this later. And so to me, when we first thought about this, combining the lab and the field, creating a whole new savings product, just seemed incredibly risky. And again, I don't know. It's not clear if it's paying off. We still haven't published this paper, but I think if you don't take risks, you're really not going to succeed. So yeah, I thought that this was a really appropriate idiom for this setting. This is the next one.
Não ver palmo diante do nariz.
Yeah, and I hope that translation's right, to not see an inch in front of your nose. And according to Google, it kind of in Brazilian it means, or in Brazil it means like not seeing the obvious thing, not seeing the really obvious solution. Okay, good.
Exactly.
Great. And this is not my study, but this is one of the very first studies at Busara. By Johannes Haushofer and Jeremy Shapiro, kind of 2 of the other co-founders of Busara, that looked at the short-term impact of unconditional cash transfer programs. Jeremy is also the founder of Give Directly, and which provides unconditional. It's an NGO that provides unconditional cash transfers all over the world. It's quite well known now, especially in development circles, and so is this paper, which was published in the QJE. But I think what's really interesting when I remember this paper and how famous it got, there was kind of 2 camps. There was one camp that thought, wow, this is really cool that there's like really rigorous evidence about the effect of unconditional cash transfers. There's a really interesting study design where they gave people large cash transfers and small cash transfers to the women versus the men. And they also measured salivary cortisol, which allowed us to see that cash made people not only better off, but less stressed. And then there's a whole camp of people that thought, well, obviously, right, this is like really not interesting. It's really obvious. And to me, it spawned like this very simple study that was really based on the conditional cash transfer programs like Bolsa Familia, was just Jeremy not being able to see it in front of his nose and see what is the best solution for poverty. It's making people, the best way to make people less poor is to give them money. And I think sometimes in behavioral science, we tend to lose, we tend to get really cute about the things that we want to do. We tend to envision all these really complex designs and these complex ideas when sometimes the obvious solution's right in front of our face. And so I remember Jeremy told me this story when he was starting Give Directly. They just did all the research that they could. They said, what's the best way to make people less poor? And the overwhelming evidence was give people cash. And I think a cynic will tell you, yeah, all they did was give people cash and study it. But I would tell you that's exactly the answer that they should have done. And I'm glad that they did. And so, I hope that, as we grow as behavioral scientists together, that we never kind of lose the really obvious solution and never look past the obvious solution as something that just won't work or something that's not interesting enough or not cute enough. I think a lot of great development programs are just really the obvious ones that are already in people's hands. This is the next one. This is the one I have no idea if this actually makes sense.
It makes more sense if there is a no before, like dar o braço a torcer is like don't give how can I say? Don't give up of something that you believe. So I think não dar o braço a torcer.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, guys, Diogo, Gabriel, help me. I think something like that.
Yeah, it's about being stubborn with something.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
You won't give up.
Okay. So it still works. This is why I chose idioms, because they're very interpretable. Google told me that this one meant be humble. So I thought that seemed a little strange, but okay, it also means be humble. Okay, good. And this is another study that isn't mine, but done by a number of really wonderful behavioral and development experimentalists. And it was the very first external study at Busara. So Busara was founded really by a professor named Johannes Haushofer, who had a grant to really study how stress affects economic decision making. And so originally it was, we worked just to do that body of research, but he really wanted to make it a public good for all researchers. And it still is today. If anyone wants to, anyone can come and run an academic study at Busara. That's always been our mission, is to really help any researcher come to research. But this group here, this long list of people from the Norwegian School of Economics and Berkeley, were the first to run an external study. And they spent a lot of money running a very, very careful, well-specified study asking, does kind of political, during the election, is there a lot more kind of ethnic tension in the rise to different elections? And it made a lot of sense, because in 2007 there was a presidential election that led to a lot of ethnic violence, that led to thousands of people dying. And so they wanted to know in the next election in 2014, as that ramped up, as that election became more salient, does it lead to more polarization, more ethnic polarization? And I think it was a really great question. They worked really hard. They worked maybe a year before, and I think they're still working on it. They just published it this year. And they came to us. We ran a lab study with lots of different ethnicities that we had to bring in. They invented new kinds of games, new kinds of public goods games and dictator games and all these other things. And the big conclusion from this, 5,000 person study was no, it doesn't change at all. And I thought that, I always think about that, because they spent, maybe $100,000 on this study. And one might say, well, what a disaster. But I would also say they also were humble enough. They didn't give up. They knew what they wanted to see, and they powered their experiment to be able to say, actually, no, in this setting, we don't see that. And I think that's just as important. I think it's good to remember that a really strong, well-powered null result, right, is really good. And asking which really forces us to ask a really good question. We really want to think about asking questions in behavioral science such that even if you find the answer is nope, you're going to find that really, really fascinating. And I think they did a really good job of kind of keeping their eye on why it's well motivated in the literature, why this is a really interesting thing, and then not just settling on a really underpowered, oh, well, we didn't see a huge result, that's okay, spending the time to do it carefully, invest the money into doing it right. And they found a very tight zero, which is, I think, a contribution to the literature nonetheless. But I think it takes a lot of humility and it takes a lot of perseverance to kind of push through when you have null results. It's very easy to kind of put them in the drawer and file them away for another day.
Totally agree. Amazing. Yeah. Want to read tomorrow, today, not tonight, tomorrow. Perfect. Great one. Great one for behavioral scientists, this one, and experimental scientists. Procurando chifre na cabeça de cavalo. And it's, in English, searching the horns on the horse's head. So it makes a lot of sense in behavioral and experiments too. Yeah,
if I understand this one, it's kind of looking for problems or looking for things when there aren't any things. Yeah, and good. Okay, and these aren't related studies because I've been talking for too long. These are just little things that I've thought about. So this should go a little bit faster. There's a saying in English, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and I think this is a very similar idea that sometimes as behavioral scientists, you fall in love with your discipline, you fall in love with the tools that you have, and that's the only thing that you see. And I really encourage people, especially, at Busara, a lot of times we specifically hire people that don't have any behavioral science experience because that fresh perspective also adds. We want people with different tools, different backgrounds. We believe that we can teach people the fundamentals of behavioral science. And so we want people from all walks of life, all different experiences. We don't just want pure economists because everyone is going to say, well, let's make an experiment or let's design an RCT or we must think about the incentives. And sometimes it's a lot different. It's a lot deeper, a lot contextual and cultural. And so I would just urge everyone to remember that even though you're armed with this really great toolkit, it's just one of the many toolkits that you might have. And you really want to think about, again, the right research question to answer the right problem that you're facing.
Descascar o abacaxi. Peel the pineapple. How can we explain? Did you understand what Google said?
Google says it's like, solving the problem, like working hard and just getting something done, solving the issues. Okay, yes. Okay. This is really interesting. I'm from Hawaii, so we peel a lot of pineapples. So I didn't realize it was a thing. But yeah, this is very related to the last statement that I had, which is, especially in applied behavioral science, I think you never want to forget that you're trying to really solve a problem, that you're trying to help an organization make a decision. One of my colleagues told me, as we're going through 2020 and we're searching for solutions, he said, Channing, sometimes there aren't solutions, there are only decisions. And I think that's really true. And a lot of times we just have to remember that even though we want to do really great research and we want to do things really rigorously and very carefully, sometimes you're working with a company or an organization or a government that just wants an answer. And you have to do the best work that you can to give them that answer with the confidence that you have, because in the business world, in the real world, people can't wait for a p-value of less than 0.05. They need a p-value. They need to have better than a 50-50 guess, and they'll probably go for it, right? So at the end of the day, it's another thing that I always tell a lot of people at Busara: don't forget that you're trying to solve problems. Don't forget that they're hiring you or they're working with you because they want your advice. They want you to help them implement something to make a difference in the world at the end of the day. And a research report's really great, but if it doesn't speak to them, if they don't know how to make it actionable, if it doesn't come to life, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. And Flavia, I've actually been sharing your Heineken case study back to Busara, saying, this is what I mean by we need to also solve problems. We can't just say conceptually this kind of messaging works. You have to say, no, here, put these labels in here, develop these appetizers, make these drinks. That kind of bringing things to the real world to solve real problems, I think is really the core of applied behavioral science. And I think it's really important.
But that's amazing, Jenny, because it's really a challenge, because when you are passionate, like as a researcher, you want to do the experiment, and if you can see causality, and your client wants to put another thing there, and I said, oh, it's gonna mess everything up. And that's very nice, and nice to hear your experience too, because we need to go back to that all the time. It's a challenge, I think, for all of us.
I agree. I think that it's to me the most fundamental challenge. And it happens, whether they're changing things in the middle of experiment, they want to start p-hacking. Oh, surely there's another correlation here that we should look for, right? Like you're always going to come up with these issues, and I think it's important to have the empathy for the client on what they're really trying to go for. They're not trying to do bad science. They're really looking for decisions. They're looking for answers. And I think being able to separate those things often helps to bridge some of that empathy gap with, oh my God, this guy's just ruining my project. He's ruining my experiment. I think that
and just a small comment, like when you said that you hire people that are not behavior scientists, behavior economists, and I was telling in the beginning of our talk about everyone that got in the team this year, pandemic, that were together, and we had a lot of designers. Paula is from human resources and executive in the area not related to behavior economics. And it was amazing. Like I'm gonna share with you tomorrow all the tool we did, online tool with our methodology, all design thinking. And I think and that solves the client's problem. We don't need to do like an RCT, And it was so important for us also to have these other minds thinking about other frameworks and other tools that were not that complex too. So nice.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. Behavioral science, as a lot of us practice it, like the behavioral econ strand of behavioral science, is really like economists stealing from psychologists, right? So like we shouldn't guard our discipline too tightly, right? Like it's okay. Like we can work with designers, we can work with other people and continue to make the field better.
Yeah, perfect.
Just a couple more. I think that's the last one actually.
No, you got such nice things. You have a Brazilian friend. Tell us, Jenny. You have a Brazilian friend or
colleague? I wish I did.
No one saw this before, sure. Enfiar o pé na jaca. What Google said to you?
Yeah, so. Google said it's something like in English, like put 3 sheets to the wind, like just go for it, like have a big night, just and I think that's really my last advice to all of you, or my last reflection on how Busara has grown and how I think behavioral science has grown, is you just kind of have to sometimes just go for it, right? Like, I think the matching that audacity of these big ideas and being able to go and reach out and do new things with the rigor of having a really strong scientific basis is what's so exciting about behavioral science that a lot of other disciplines don't have. And so I think even though we want to solve problems, even though we want to be consultative, even though we want to do really good research, we can't forget that the field is really based on really being out there and getting out there and really trying to be at the frontier, whether that means of the science or even of the applied work. I think it also means yeah, you have to try new things. You have to push the boundaries. You have to be okay to fail a little bit. When I think of the idiom, or I think of the phrase "step in a jackfruit," that just sounds really icky. Like, and so I think you have to get your feet dirty a little bit as well. But I think that's underappreciated, is that people that are really audacious about it usually get what they want. When I started at Busara, it was, I remember my wife was moving to Kenya. I was in my third year of my PhD, so I didn't have any courses. And I just had learned about what lab experiments were. And so I Googled lab experiment Kenya, and this little Busara center popped up, and I just emailed the person there, and it was Johannes, and he said, okay, sure. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with this right now. Let's do something. Let's try something. You're a PhD student. You seem kind of smart. You can run these studies together. And it just kind of, I showed up, and there was 2 other people in a room, and it grew from there. And now, there's over 100 people at Busara, but I still try to take the same tact. I still try to answer every unsolicited email that comes my way when I can. I used to be able to do a lot more personally. Now I have to have a people team to help monitor those things. But I really always try to reward people that are audacious about their own ideas, their work, and their collaborations with others.
Yeah, perfect. Courage. It requires a lot of courage.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, especially in new fields, and especially in new countries that aren't used to those things. Oh, and then I think this is the last one.
Yeah, it's a nice one. So, uma andorinha não faz verão. We need to work together. Yeah, we can't. We don't do much alone. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, perfect. That's what I hoped it meant. And that is my final thought, is that we can't do things alone. I mean, one of the great things about one of the rare silver linings of this pandemic is the fact that Zoom has allowed us to get a lot closer to one another. I'd never even heard of InBehavior Lab before this and all the amazing work that they're doing, but now we can collaborate. Now I can speak to you. Maybe it's a little late to do this all the time, but I would like to do it more often, right? I'm hoping to convene more behavioral science organizations in the Global South to really learn from each other. I think that remote work also gives us an opportunity to do exchanges and secondments and try all kinds of new things so that we really can work together, because I do think that the best behavioral science has a mix of global perspective and local perspective. I'm sure that the projects in Kenya would benefit enormously from any one of you being on our team to help provide the context of what's another way of looking at these things. The same way that idioms mean different things in different cultures, I think that there's a ton that we can learn from each other, and combined will be even better. So I think that's my last thought, is as we kind of continue to embark on our behavioral science careers into next year, is let's work together. And if there's anything that I can do to help either the group or individuals, please reach out. I'll say thank you now. My email's here if you ever need to contact me, but Paula, Flavia have them. Please reach out to me. I definitely want to do whatever I can to help encourage behavioral science anywhere in the world. So thank you.
Jenny, it was amazing. And when we met in the Now Fest, I got that same energy. We were talking with some other teams. Oh, we need to reach out to Jenny. So I feel so grateful that when you wrote to us and all the opportunities and everything, because I left the talk the same way. How many things we can do together. And one thing is in behavior economics and science we can do is share experience. It's not only theory. So maybe the field work we need, if we exchange experiences, we can make other mistakes. Don't make the same you did, but make other mistakes and learn together. So for me, it was the first inspiration when I met you, and I loved our talk also. But I have talked a lot, so that's why I asked our research leads, Diogo is the lead of some researchers and projects of ours. Gabriel, I think Felipe already left. And so the floor is yours, Diogo, Gabriel. And just to say, I'm very happy to see Mulan. Mulan is one of the founders of Nudge Rio. It's a unit in Rio, Nudge Rio, and others here that also are very important for our Jaime and others. Diogo, Gabriel. Diogo, Gabriel, talk a little bit about you guys, yeah?
Yeah, should I go first, Gabriel? I don't know, maybe, okay. Nice. Hi, everyone. Good evening to everyone. Good late evening to Channing. Thank you for the presentation. It was awesome, really awesome. And you nailed all the expressions. So none of them, nobody on the internet fooled you with some joke or something like that. It was really awesome to see all the work together. So when Flavia talked to me about the Busara Center, I had heard something about it, and I went searching, and I went into the papers sections, and it was like I fell into the rabbit hole because I was just starting to read everything, and I read something and no, it's awesome, and then something else awesome. Everything you do is awesome there, and one of the things that you stress on your talk that I think is fantastic is the method agnostic approach. You don't pick the method and then go to see what you can do with this method to solve the problem. You look at the problem and then you search or invent some method of investigating it. This is to me awesome. I wrote down some. I read some of your work there, and I wrote down some questions here. I'll try not to take too long to read them, to give time to everyone else. I think that lots of people want to talk here. So first, congrats on the methodology. It's observable that you push the boundaries with the methods, and I think most of the problems you deal with they require a different approach. I wanted to ask you two questions. One about the two first questions, like one about how is the environment there for collaborations between academia and businesses? Because we tend to speak here in Brazil that it's kind of a hostile environment. So people outside of the academia see us. By the way, I'm a professor, assistant professor here in the northeastern part of Brazil, Aracaju, and we tend to say that business people don't like the academia. It's kind of true, actually, because they say in academia you spend time discussing things with no real value, and us in the academia we say that business people do stuff without thinking. So there's kind of, and this shows in the difficulties we have building bridges between the two fields. And from your work, it looks like you have this figured out there. How is the climate there for this relationship?
Yeah, no, I think it always, there was another idiom similar in Portuguese, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. And I think there's one similar, for us, it's the same, I think. And I think this is the age-old problem is that it's really hard to get academics and businesses to work together. And I think having sat on both sides, I think the fundamental tension is that the timelines that each have are just very different from one another. And it just requires patience on both sides. So no, I would totally agree with you. If any, I would still characterize it as hostile or not fully appreciative of what the others are going to bring to a combined kind of collaboration. We've tried a lot. So on our applied side, a lot of the papers that we have are papers that we've done with academics that sometimes involve organizations or have a policy bent to them. But a lot of the very applied work, most of our work now is very, very applied, and we have an indicator on what share of projects have academics on them, right? PhDs or professors, and we're always looking to collaborate, but that share never goes above maybe 20%, and it's really difficult. I think academics, are looking for something very specific, right? If they can't publish it, they can't spend a lot of time on this, right? They're precious resources of their time. And so once anything changes about the experiment, they kind of very fairly say, hey, I have to back out of this because I'm not going to be able to publish. And then on the business side, academics aren't always the best consultants. They don't really speak the language that really allows you to get very far. And so you have to kind of create this bridge between them. But no, I would agree with you, Diogo, that that's the age-old question and something that we've always wanted to tackle at Busara because it's such an obvious pairing. The academics have amazing ideas and businesses have lots of problems that need amazing ideas. And so if you could only find a way to put them together.
Nice. It's nice to hear that there is a problem there, and you guys have figured a way to deal with this, and maybe we can learn a bit about this. So let me go back here to just a couple of questions here, and before that, I would like to stress something that you did, to emphasize something that you said that is awesome here. That's collaboration south-south. So we are. This is really difficult to see happening. And it should be encouraged and should be reinforced. So it's nice. But back to this question, I think it's a follow-up question. Is one of the papers that you presented tonight, and I read it, was about the comparison between workfare and the welfare fair, and it really is really pretty interesting experiment and idea and the way that you implemented it. And I was thinking, how would you, or if you are already doing that, to scale this result? Does this lead to public policies or led to public policies already, or do you guys are thinking how to put this forward? Because it's really powerful stuff there, right? The message is really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Diogo. I think you're absolutely right that, I'd say the biggest weakness that Busara has, and again, I say this because I think it's important for us to share our weaknesses so that we can help each other. The biggest weakness Busara has always had, even though we're in Kenya, we do a lot of projects, we have very poor relationships with governments, and not poor in the sense that they don't like us, but poor in the sense that they don't know about us and they don't know how to take our findings. So we've never really, our biggest weakness all the time when people ask is, when they ask me, is scale. We have a very hard time taking our what I think are very interesting findings into like a broader kind of public policy realm. Yeah, in this case, I do think that there are lots of real ramifications here. There's one addition that I would have done if I could do it again, or if I could do a follow-up, which is looking at kind of work versus waiting versus very intentionally unproductive work. Because I think a lot of workfare programs, like especially in India, sometimes are just like you're digging a ditch and everyone knows that it's for nothing, but I just can't give you the money, so you need to do something, right? And so the work that we did, they were sorting beans, but we told them that it was that they were going to be used, and so that's a very natural kind of productive thing that people are used to doing, is to sort lentils and rice. But we wondered, what if we added a treatment where they sorted these beans and we just mixed it back up, just to show them that it's really for nothing, right? It's just because we don't want to give you the money, which I think is a lot of social programs. That was the treatment that we really wanted, that we didn't have the funding for when we originally ran the study. But I think those implications are broad. And I think if you had connections to social protection programs or social welfare offices, there's a lot that can be learned and can be designed there. Yeah, I think I would absolutely agree with you, Diogo.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought reading. I thought that there was an opportunity to try to check if significant work would make any difference, and nice that you guys have thought about that. It's the one thing that we really wanted to keep when the reviewers from the grant said, you need to cut this treatment, and we said, no, please keep this in, and they said, nope, you have to cut it. And everyone that I ever talk about this paper with or present this paper to, including the reviewers for the journal, said, why did you not put this in? And we said,
we did, we had it in there, and then we had to take it out.
Just a last comment here. I believe that area that you mentioned that is your weakness is something that should be getting more attention from behavioral scientists. Because public policies are made by people, and we study how to get to people, how to persuade people. So we should be studying how to persuade people to develop the public policies that we create or we point to. So nice. So we have already a first big point of collaboration here. Nice to see. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope we will continue to talk this coming year. Okay, Gabriel, please, thank you for your talk, and it's been an amazing time here.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
So.
So, fantastic presentation, Channing. Fantastic your work, all the things you are doing there. Thank you very much for being with us and sharing all your knowledge and your work and your passion and the way to find things in the South that are meaningful for people and meaningful for decision makers. I think that you stressed so many points that we try to push when we speak about behavioral sciences, and we try to pass also when we teach and for practitioners. So it was very inspiring, and it was great that you pointed all those things. I will be very brief, but I would like to hear from you some reflections on especially what things do you think that the behavioral science agenda in the South should have? There are so many things that are interesting that are developed in the North with weird subjects, and there are also many things done in India and in developing countries that are also very interesting. But speaking here, South to South, now that we are here in the South, what do you think is the main challenge for us as behavioral scientists, and what would you think is the main topic to really build a South agenda on behavioral science? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, good question. Wow, how much time do you got? This is I think the first one, right? Like, not to be reductive, but I think the first thing is, the first agenda I'd like to have is dialogue and listening, right? Like, I don't necessarily think I have the answers. And precisely because of that, I think the first thing that we want to do is create better networks with each other. It's very common for us to have networks with our universities wherever they happen to be, right? So like Busara has a lot of connections to Princeton and Harvard because we did a lot of studies there earlier. And so whenever there's a problem, that's where we think about going. But I think the first thing I would want to say is like, it should come first to our mind to contact each other rather than contacting, the universities and things. And obviously those are good allies as well, but just the listening is, I think, the first thing. I think the second thing that is really a weak spot in behavioral science in the global South is the fact that so many of the heuristics and biases that this field is kind of resting on is just weird research, right? And it's really basically just Kahneman-Tversky stuff back from the 60s. And if you ever read those papers, like, yeah, they're super underpowered. There's like 40 observations there with a bunch of like students at a Israeli university or Cornell filling out a paper survey, right? And I think that the logic is extremely compelling, right? But I think there's a lot of validation that needs to be done of those biases and thinking about how to bring those biases out. We've been doing a little bit of work on that in India. I can share a blog that one of our research specialists wrote where they tried to contextualize different kind of behavioral biases and saw what really translated and what didn't. And then beyond just beyond the replication and validation, which I think is important, what heuristics and biases exist in our cultures, in our settings, that don't exist in the North, right? Surely these are different enough cultures that reflect a different history, a different people, and we should be able to find and really understand the human mind in that setting even more fundamentally than simple heuristics and biases, right? And so I think that to me is the biggest thing, is getting a better appreciation for what people that really understand the context and really can have a theory of the mind for the people that they're designing their solutions for, what that can really bring. Which is kind of my third point, which I'm really jealous of what you guys have been able to do, which is develop the amazing cohorts of homegrown talent. As much as I love being in Kenya, I'm not Kenyan. And so I will never be as good of a behavioral scientist as a Kenyan, right? That might have my skill set, but lives in the context that they have. The same way is that, Flavio would be a great behavioral scientist in Hawaii, but I might be a little bit better. So one thing, I think a final thing that I would really like to do in terms of South-South collaboration is really grow that talent base in the Global South. Again, this is through exchanges. This is through going to other places, seeing other cultures, seeing other contexts. And oftentimes it'll open your eyes to, your own context back at home. And so just really developing that talent base that's so critical in the Global South to have, so that we're not relying on all of, on expats coming in. And I say this as an expat, like I want less of me in the Global South going forward. So I'm really hoping to put myself out of a job in the near future. So I'd say those are the three things that I think are really
great. And then I will not make another question, just I will extend an invitation to all of us. Let's try to develop projects together. Once we have one study in one of our continents, let's share between us and let's see if we can just replicate the same idea in the other place. I think that you have a point there. What we need to do is to talk more between us, and I definitely see things. We have a fantastic group of very talented behavioral scientists that Flavia led in the program, and we have many here, Rafael, Marianne. We have really a fantastic group of people that really want to develop things. So let's do it. The next project that we have, or the ones that we are doing now, let's try to replicate each other instead of replicating always the things that are doing in the North. So that's the kind of general invitation that I'm doing thing. Channing, once again, thank you very much. It was a fantastic presentation, very inspiring, and definitely I think that we will see each other more. Great, thank you very much.
I'm sure. Gabriel is from Uruguay. As I told you, we have Brazil, Uruguay, Northeast. We have in each place of the South, we are a little represented. So I'm very happy that it's an opportunity also to join. I also was thinking when you were talking how would it be nice. It's 2 now a.m. there, okay? But imagine if it's like at least, I don't know, 7 p.m. or something, but we can have like a good talk with our teams. I think Busara teams, our teams, because I'm sure Diogo, Gabriel, you didn't talk with Carol, Felipe, and many other leads here. We love to share more and get more in detail. So I think also we can have a meeting, more technical one also, so we can meet and even more each other. Another thing, Claudia Pires also joined the call. I sent you in the proposal, I sent you like a video in English. I don't know if you saw in the favelas, the recycling projects in the favelas, that she did an amazing job here. Also, Claudia is with us as an important and inspiring partner for us. So I think we have many people that can gather many minds to think about challenges that are not in other places. Like Claudia, it's the recycling favelas, and there is a loyalty program, so everyone can go in the favela and have money, courses, and food and everything. Yes, Claudia, for them. So just to give an example of things that I think if we think together, we can go and build innovative things that we can't think now, yes, but I imagine like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I really believe that we can help a lot each other and the world in general. Do we have any other questions here? We have, oh, okay, and important. Some of the people that Gabriel mentioned, it's from the program, the MBA program. So that I told you that many, so Rafael, Mari, many others here, Giovanna, that's for our team. So as I told you, one thing that we are very proud and happy to have are those students that now are scientists and can help us out in each place of Brazil. Any questions, guys? And if you want, Gabariana, Isabella, Rafa, Giovanna, any of them, do you have any questions to Channing?
I have one more. Can I?
Perfect. Great.
Nice. Channing, I think one of the studies that you mentioned, you talked about how anticipated regret might be playing a role. I think it was when you let me see.
The lottery with Dan Ariely, the lottery.
Yeah. Quem arrisca não petisca. Is that it? Yeah. I've known a lottery in the Netherlands that plays directly with that feeling that they draw zip codes. And you only get the price if you live in that zip code and you bought the ticket. So you see everybody around you getting rich, and you don't get rich. So people tend to buy it to avoid this regret. One question I have is I've seen some ideas in which social control is maintained through a kind of negative reinforcement. So you get people to do stuff to avoid feeling something. And this, every time I read about it, I think the ethic concerns related to that. So in general, we are talking about public policy earlier. How do you think behavior economics should deal with the ethic concerns that should or could arise from the idea that we are actually manipulating behavior?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good issue, and I think one also that's not talked about enough in the Global South specific context or in a poverty context. I think there's the two arguments that researchers and policymakers make is IRBs and libertarian paternalism, respectively. And I think they're fine arguments to make when you're arguing that, we're thinking about choice architecture, we're not moving any choice, we're just nudging people in the right direction. And I think that's okay. But what I would say is that when you're working in development, in developing countries, in developing areas, in poor areas, there's two things that are really, I think, relevant. One is the concept of choice is just very different. The power dynamics you have to recognize are just going to be very different. And then the second one is a lot of the work that we do isn't really nudging. A lot of it is social behavior change campaigns, right? Which is a very direct, directly trying to influence someone's preferences over something, not just their choice over it, right? So you're no longer just touching, you can't hide behind the intent to action gap. Well, they want to do it anyway, we're just trying to close that gap. A lot of the work in behavioral science, especially that Busara does, is very heavily based on behavior change, which does have a normative lens to it. So, to me, I think I don't have a really good answer for this, except to say that I think that there are more questions than what you might face at BIT, for example, or Ideas 42 in the US, because the populations that we're working with are just very different, and the kind of work is different as well.
Yes, perfect. Diogo, any other question? Great.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
No, amazing. Channing, thank you so much for every word. I'm sure we will meet many other times, so, but it's nice to close to the 2020 with your inspiring experience, history, also showing like how Busara was small, and maybe we have like a global South lab, huge lab. So thank you very much, and with your help, I think you will go forward. So thank you, and I'm gonna ask you for us to take a picture with everyone that's here. So usually in the end, so everyone that can put the camera, Patricia, Giovanna, so you can have a picture of this moment. Great. Giovanna, so let's go. Perfect. Channing, any other questions, guys? So thanks a lot. Very good night there. And talk soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Congrats.
I really appreciate the time, and always delighted to speak to you. And if you have any other questions or follow-ups, please reach out. I really look forward to working with this group more into 2021 and beyond. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm sure. Thank you, Channing. Thank you very much. It was amazing.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, guys. Tchau, tchau, pessoal.